10 years back came Anurag Kashyap's Gangs of Wasseypur, a tale of generational feud between families, set in the quasi-real space of Dhanbad, Jharkhand, emphasizing the power struggles over coal mines intricately linked with political agendas. Gangs of Wasseypur, now a part of our cinema's cult history, had multiple layers to offer over and above the premise of its cyclic revenge saga, be in its memorable characters, comic interjections, representation of the changing face of popular cinema in India, or in its stylistic violence. A decade later, Kashyap presents another story of family feud across generations, this time as a producer. And yet Paka, The River of Blood by debutant director Nithin Lukose is as different as it can be from Wasseypur saga and so many other films on generational revenge that we have witnessed in Indian cinema. Paka subverts multiple genre motifs along its runtime, hitting at all our familiar expectations out of a revenge movie. It is a brilliant piece of work that talks about the India we live in today, without ever highlighting its cleverly vested politics. So here we are to discuss all that and more in this analysis of Paka, now streaming on SonyLiv, a platform that truly deserves all your accolades for the back-to-back quality content it keeps on offering. Before we move on, here's once again requesting for your support through likes, shares and subscriptions. We need your support to grow further. So the question is, how does Paka stand out from the rest in its approach to the revenge drama narrative? Well, it hits at the core of the idea itself, as it takes out the drama itself from one of the most dramatic genres of world cinema. The murders happen for both the families like a clockwork, bodies being dumped into the river just like that. You know exactly where to look for if any member goes missing in either of the families for some time. The camera is not interested in capturing any bloodshed as multiple murders happen across 100 minutes of runtime. Instead, the focus is on the search for the body in the river, cleverly constructed set piece that the film starts with and keeps coming back to. The river as the dump yard of dead bodies is such a regular affair now that there are men specialized in the skills of searching the bodies from within the depth of the river. It's like a new profession in this side of Wayanad, as we watch Jose, one of the divers, demanding for his off days or expressing professional rivalry with Tiger Johnny, the diver from the next village. The fun is so subtle and so horrifying at the same time. Each murder means a new photo frame on the wall of either family, the trigger for the next one. These photos are not memories but scoreboards for the still living members to get going with the generational routine. The villagers too keep their accounts as every new murder turns into a show for them, a reason to gather together by the banks of the river like a cultural association. See you at the next murder, we feel them saying to each other as sounds of cricket commentary or WWE wrestling is heard in the background. Well, yes, Paka establishes revenge as a sport within these beautiful surroundings of northeast Kerala. It is this crowd that represents the India we live in today, numb to the idea of another incident of acute violence just round the corner. Well, there's too much happening to care for any of them, right? Just like the villages we watch on screen. The film mentions how back in the 40s to 70s, families migrated to Wayanad from central Kerala, starting these feuds with the locals. Something similar happened for both these families we watch in Paka. There was some reason for the violence in the past, but today they are just carrying the baton without much logic. In Wasseypur, there was the power struggle and the vested politics as we mentioned at the start. But here in Wayanad, the murders happen as if it's customary to let the violence continue. And isn't that the reality of our country today as we dig up reasons for savagery every day? New excuses to dominate and disintegrate each other. Paka, in its microcosm setting, talks much more than one beautiful river of this country that bears the burden of dead bodies piling up in its bed. The motive of the river perhaps works as a symbol of a country with multiple ethnicities that is civilized by the banks of many crisscrossing rivers. And is it only the bodies of the two families that get dumped? Not at all. The first instance itself shows us a man being pulled out of the river who doesn't belong to either side. Well, obviously, in an environment of savagery all around, the violence only spreads and no one gets spared. Paka passes on the most important idea right at the onset. It's interesting that the way to the river we witness in the film appears like a deeply cut V. a rift between the two sides that each character passes through. Johnny, played by Basil Paulose, is one such character belonging to the financially weaker family between the two. He represents the arc of the logical, sensible man in this world, ever depleting of its senses. He is in love with Anna from the other family, following his heart towards a potential future that might seize the cycle of revenge after all. Unlike other Romeo and Juliet adaptations set on the similar premise, Paka hardly has the time for the love blooming between the two. They met, they liked each other, and then fell in love. But now, that's a matter of the past. Again, like the state of affairs around, they hardly find the shelter of love. Instead, love itself is looking for a shelter now, trying its best to run away from the clutches of encompassing violence. And then finally, the pacifist succumbs, as we have seen so many times in history, as Paka depicts both literally and metaphorically. Early in the film, we find Johnny always discarding the idea of dipping into the river, while eventually the river gets him all drenched, first to save his life and then to recover a lifeless body. The stains of water take over Johnny as we watch in agony how yet another sane voice gets swallowed by violence. Kochappan, Johnny's uncle who returns back from prison for murdering Anna's father, might have been a victim of a similar fate. Paka creates a deceptive perception of this character at the start. Again, a clear deviation from similar characters we have seen in other revenge movies. His return from the jail reminds of Padmarajan's Peruvariyambalam, the way the notorious Prabhakaran Pillai had walked back to his hometown. But we slowly realize how within the Goliath stature of Kochappan lies an innocent heart, remorseful of his past deeds, pleading to make things better for the future. Perhaps he too had a similar arc that Johnny will get down to, else how he becomes the only one to be reprimanded by law, as we watch the local police indifferent to the murder parade, much like the villagers. In all its subversions, strategic deviations from the cliches, and desensitized approach to violence, Paka comes across as a distinct portrayal of religious revenge. Revenge, which is supposedly the strongest of emotions, is served almost unemotionally in this film, much like fundamentalism that thrives from any religion, as the spirit of the rule is eclipsed by the letters of the rule. What else do we expect if one family is headed by a blind old man bereft of sentiments and the other by a cursing matriarch who utters biblical hymns but instigates vengeful violence that had killed Jesus? Look closely and you will find the paradox of Paka present all around you. Nithin Lukose and team, thank you for this brilliant rendition to capture the time and space of our living. Thank you for your distinct voice from within the tedium of revenge sagas. Thank you for enriching our cinema. That is all from us today. Hope to see you in our next video.